Yeah, we're definitely getting a pedal system for this because I can't do this for
No, that boat will wear you out. Plus, you're high out of the water, so paddling is not even an optimal angle for you.
If you own a Vibe Shearwater 125 and have a paddle in your hand, it's fine. It'll get you off the shore. It'll move you around a little bit. But having the pedals drive truly allows this boat to go anywhere you want it to go. You'll find yourself crashing through waves that you didn't think were possible because you can keep the balance that you want. And the best thing of all, you can even have a beer in your hand while you do it. The pedals drive kit does necessitate one other thing though, and that is installing a steering handle, because if your feet are on the pedals, they can't be on the foot pegs that allow the rudder control. So that's the task, is to install that steering system. This is part 2 of my Vibe Shearwater 125 steering handle installation, and as you can see I have a Hobie Mirage Drive 180 V2 Kickup. This is a really sweet unit, better than anything else on the market in my opinion. That's why I got this. It does interface with the Vibe branded pedals box, which is cool. So different brand, interfaces. Now here's the funny thing. I get this steering handle and I open it up thinking it's just going to be the handle. But no, in fact it has a full set of cable in it. And it doesn't mention that anywhere on the website in the product description. I'm a little annoyed, but we were able to recycle the cable that was too short from the original foot pegs. It had broken off in the back and left not enough to reattach the rudder. And using it here instead of all the way up front, it is long enough. So it's cool that it has an extra one, but shame on you, Vibe, for not mentioning it on your product page. I couldn't buy an extra one because they were out of stock, so I don't have to return anything, and that's nice. So here's what also comes in the kit. There's the stainless steel screws. I wasn't sure if those would be in there or not, but they are. And the little brake shoe. Alright, I've got the contents of the kit out now. I don't like the fact that the brake shoe can be lost if this loses tension with your boat, because the steering handle would remain attached to the lines if this were to back the screw all the way out, as I've heard some other people have problems with. But unfortunately, you're going to lose this little brake shoe, and it's a pretty specific part. This should be sold separately. You should be able to buy spares of these, but even better than that would be if they had threaded this. So instead of the screw simply putting tension on the brake shoe, it would stay attached to the screw. I think that would be a much better design. But you get what you get. Alright, I'm about to install the handle. I'm using a Posi-Drive screwdriver rather than a Phillips, but it's pretty much the same. I'm not going to use power tools because it's not that many turns and I don't want to over torque anything. Alright, now it's time to install the cables on the handle. I have nuts tying these off so they didn't slip back while I was away from this project. Had to wait for the parts to arrive. Get a pretty sharp scissor to work with this stuff, it looks like. Perhaps those kitchen shears aren't up to the task. I'm trying to keep this from falling apart as it gets pulled through, but you can't make it much bigger than it is. The hole on the handle is very close to the size of the thread that's going in there. There's not a lot of extra. Oh, see, now that I perfected the threading, I don't need the tweezer. I just needed more fuel for my later. Alright, well, you can clearly make just a basic knot on the back of this. I had a little 4mm stainless steel nut keeping the thing in check, but that'll barely fit back here, and it seems completely unnecessary because you can barely get the thread through this little hole. Certainly with a double knot of any kind, it ain't gonna move. Actually, I wouldn't even say that's necessary. That is pretty thick and chunky just with a single. Put some tension on it. It's good. It ain't gonna go in there. So, that side's done. And that is what I wanted. The top one on the bottom. Nope, I've messed up. I put it in the wrong hole. I wasn't paying attention to the way this needed to go around first, so that way as it comes around it doesn't awkwardly move. So it looks like I'll be redoing this one. Well, these are the things that you learn. That one needed to be at the bottom, and yes, it is direction specific apparently. All right, so this is where I want it to path. The top cable will go through the bottom hole. Hopefully this isn't too large because it feels kind of chunky. There's just the tiniest little bit peeking through there. Tweezer to the rescue. So you can either do a perfect job on it, as you can see it's pulling it apart now. I got kind of mangled. So you can either do a perfect job of melting it really small, or use a tweezer to pull it through. And it is going to mangle some of that cord, so be prepared. Time for that single knot on the back. Doesn't need to be a square knot or anything bulky, just a single will do. Make sure it's not too close to the end, so it doesn't pull the knot tight and then slip through. All right, so that side's good. And now it's on the bottom, which is going to thread over the top like that. So as I steer, it will still have plenty of extra cord. All right, now the other side. This one I melted just right and it slipped through without the need of a tweezer. Look at that. All right, so another knot. Leaving plenty of tail on it. I'd say, about an inch or so is good. Oh, do not tie it over the edge though. That's silly. We want to tie it just to itself. Otherwise this won't work very well. But anyway, about an inch of tail hanging out. That way if this knot wants to slip, it won't run out of thread to slip down. Okay. Tuck the extra into the little housing there. All right, so threads oriented the way I want. All right, we're continuing on because I had a little intrigue. I've watched the Vibe install video again. It'd be nice if they mentioned somewhere about the orientation of this, like do you want the brake in the back? Do you want the brake in the front? Because you could do it either way. I've already got the lines tied on this thing now, and it's backwards. Because in their installation video, they show the brake up front. Now I've got the cables crossed to pull that off. If I want to just run these around the sensible way, they're going to be crossing over each other as they go back into the housing. So that's a little annoying. So for today, I'm going to leave it this way. If I have to change it after a day on the lake, I will. Otherwise, thanks, Vibe. Also, here's the really strange thing. In the kit, you have two sharp point screws, self-tappers. Those are used in the back. Then you have the two that you removed from the handle, no problem. But in addition to that, they've given you this short one, which they don't show where it goes. I've already had this screw in, and I can confirm that this one's too short to do anything with on this spot. But I don't know why this part is included. When I had this in the first time, you can see that's quite a lot of thread going through. And that's about how much is going to go in there because this screw bottoms out. This little plastic thing is about the same. So that's how much is threading in there. I couldn't do it by hand, so I've got my power drill now. But I'm a little annoyed because I don't want to break anything on this boat that can't easily be replaced, like whatever this threaded part is. But this little plastic collar does go in there. This gives you plenty of thread. And the plastic collar gives it a way to spin without doing any damage on the handle side. But yeah, so you can put your brake on there and try to set it in place and not drop anything. This can be threaded later, so I'll worry about that in a minute. But I'm about to put a lot more torque on this than I thought would be necessary. Yeah, it chirped through. That's what it was. So when I was using my hand driver on my first attempt, it just was feeling super tight. I didn't want to overdo it, but indeed, it is that tight. Okay, so now I've got to the point where there's a little bit of tension on my brake. All right, so I have this thread going at the top, and it's not tangled with this one if I go under like this, so that's going to go around. Then this one's going to come around the other way. This steering handle has had some real-world experiences, and I have made a discovery. Unfortunately, the direction of the brake is crucial. This is how loose it is after one day on the lake. Now, it was about 6 hours, and there was a lot of movement. But another problem cropped up, and that's cable creep. You can see how this is sitting out of the track. Well, apparently, when the brake is on this side, it does make enough of a lean kind of outward like this that it's pushing the track slightly away from the cable. And we had more problems on the inside where this would slip over the inside of the disc than the outside. But fortunately, in the back, and you remember my little nuts here, I was able to untie these and move them down. So that was just a single knot, which means I didn't lose cable length. So I will lose a little bit when I fix this because I'm going to have to cut these off on the inside here. That's really annoying, but unfortunately, again, there's no instructions, and it doesn't specifically say that the vibe word should be on toward the stern of the boat, and the brake should be in front toward the bow. That doesn't matter which side you're doing, so the brake will be toward the front of the boat. So now I have to cut this off and do it again, but that's fine because this got pretty loose, which means I'm removing the handle and doing something with the screw anyhow. This might sound funny, but I really don't like redoing work. One of the reasons why I'm making this follow-up video is because I don't want anybody else to have to go through the same pain that I did with a process that could easily have been avoided. So one of the annoying things is I still need to get some blue Loctite to hold this sloppy puck on here and prevent it from doing this every time this boat gets taken out. Because honestly, that's just no good. I mean, how many turns does it need? And it's so tight. Yeah, that's it. So not a lot, maybe a quarter of a turn total, but that is enough to make it not work. All right, so what I'm doing now is basically pulling the cables and putting them reversed so that the brake is on the front side of the boat instead of the back like it is here. Brake pad should be attached. Something for your next version vibe. Maybe get that together so that way your customers don't lose their parts in the lake or even in their own garage. So yeah, the problem is these are tied into tight knots. I'm not getting that string out of there easily. I don't want to sit there and pick at that. But I'm only going to lose a little bit and I have plenty in back. So just to make a note to myself, why is this pulling the tubeway out? Not good. All right, so basically the lower cable is going to come over the top, but it's going to end on that side. So let's cut this off. My super sharp leather shears. Doing a good job on this cable here. Let that dangle. This one, rather than drop it, I am going to simply put it in the other hole so I don't forget which one I'm trying to do. Because that seems smart. Alright, so I've taken both ends off. Now this one I want in this hole now. So I'm just going to hold that like that in my thumb and go, that's where it's going. First though, cigar torch. Doesn't fill the light generally. Oh, look at that. Now it's filling the light too. Can I catch a break? There we go. Alright. Nothing wants to work right. That's pretty knobby. I might need to cut that again. In fact, I don't think that's going to fit, so we'll just whack that whole thing off of there. It feels pretty good, so I don't want to make it too big. I think I just burned it too much. Alright, and that's where my thumb was, so it needs to go into this hole here. Didn't need my tweezers, had them handy, but didn't need them. Okay, I'm going to tie a knot. Before I tighten this, I'm going to triple check that's facing the way that I want it to. Again, leaving about 1 inch of tail. And this one allows the brake to be in the front, this going over the top like that, and attached. So yes, that is the correct hole for this. So what I'm going to do now is wrench that down and let this waxy, stringy thread stuff do the work. I don't want to wreck my hand, so I'm going to use a little leverage on this here tool. There we go. All right, so that one's done. Being very careful not to let these slip back into the tubeway. I need to now tie the other one. Melt this gently, just a little bit. Just want to cut off with an interesting sort of chisel point on it, which will probably make it easier, hopefully. I'm going to use the tweeze on this one so I don't expand the width of the thread. Always good to have it around. You might not need it, but makes your life easier. All right, tie a knot on this one. And it doesn't matter if these get caught one over the other because you can always flip it around before you screw it in. If it was attached to the boat while you were doing this, it would matter, but here it doesn't. So a little knot on the end of this thread. About 1 inch hanging off. And tighten using the leverage of the screwdriver. All right, so we don't want that sliding or slipping, so that one should be nice and tight on the inside on both. Tuck the extra tail up into there so it doesn't grind on the boat and make the brake not work properly. Okay, so that's all done. And I want the brake in the front, and that needs to go around the bottom. And this one needs to go around the top. Okay, so that's got a little bit of extra on it. I'm going to pull that. So that way it stays put. All right, now I need to install my brake. Slide it against the boat body. All right, to avoid having you watch a bunch of stupid stuff that you don't need to see, I have reattached the handle here, and I'm going to wait on the thread locker. I think it'll be necessary, but I want to run this one more time. Right now, the tension on this handle is good. It doesn't wobble, and the brake is adjusted such that in the back here, I am able to pull on these nut retainers with just a pair of fingers. I don't need leverage beyond that. Well, I need a little leverage on this one because it's a little more sticky in that direction. But I'm correcting one other problem that I had, and that's nice handle centering when these two nuts are in exactly the same position on the back of the boat. So you can see the handle is straight up and down as it should be. And then back here, these two nuts are both the same distance. That gives them enough room to travel in and not get in the way. And I'll be tying off to the rudder just next to the nut. All right, we've done this dance before. I have the rudder, the pull-up cable is attached, so it makes it a little harder to put in, but not much. Just have to release that ball. Apparently, it's pretty snug up here on the front. Alright, that gives me the slack I need. Drop that in. Set the cotter pin. Alright, so now, as you can see, there is about 2 fingers width on either side for between the nut and where it's going to enter here. And yeah, my observation about these screws. I am going to use my drill here and put one of these screws in just a little bit. Notice it's the top hole I'm screwing into. The thread is coming out of the bottom hole. Tension 1, not going to cut it. So let's bring that to 12 and see what we do. Good, okay. Almost feel the tip of that screw coming through, so I didn't want to put that in my finger. All right, now the tail of this thing, I want to tighten these loops up And now I'm going to go the requisite 2 times over, snug it down, and wrench it on here with this. Okay, tension 12 seems pretty good. As long as the cord doesn't come off, which it will. So, tension 12 is not good. Let's try 20. That's a lot of torque. Oh, I just stripped it out. So, there you go. The screw provided. Don't recommend tension 20 on your drill, because now the hole is expanded. I'll have to put some material in there to make it do anything again. In the field, they're going to be difficult to tighten and avoid over-tightening. So honestly, they're just sort of there as a reminder to wrap a cord around something solid, other than just leaving it completely to not work and pressing through. But this isn't that big a deal. Basically take any part of the thread that's not in bad condition, fold it in half, run it through the holes. You can see I didn't have any problem doing it on either side, and this cable's been used. And you want to have, with your steering handle straight up and down, nice centered position here as well. So now what we're going to do is go up and over those 6 times. I'm just going to do 3 on each side initially, because I want to be able to check the centering before I start cranking things down. With 3, it's going to move a little bit, but I have the ability to tug on it and still adjust. And I want to get this guitar string tight, which if you've done 6 wraps, there's pretty much no way to tighten it additionally. I can just sort of move these out of the way to get that first one going. And to get that tension that I'm looking for, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to move this just a little bit off of center and tighten there on the first side that I'm working on, because that has the 3 loops. Now that's not moving. I'm going to go 3 more. 2, 3. I always like keeping extra stuff around, whether it's wire or cord or string, because you never know when you might need it, and if you cut it off, it's just gone. You don't have the option. Now I'm going around the wrong way on this, sort of, because my thing is over here. So even though the screw would normally tighten and you'd want to follow that direction, I'm just using this as a guide basically to keep it from moving. So I'm just going over that once, and then I'm going to keep going with this 2 or 3 more times. But what that's going to do is lock it in a place that's got a different pathing than this part here. And then when I tie it off to my line here, which I don't have much left, and that's fine. I don't want this dangling in the water. I don't want it getting ripped up. I just want this to stay out of the way for the day of boating. So a single hitch knot there, a second hitch knot. That's just a suggestion, but having it wrapped 6 times around and around the screw at the midpoint, it's not going to go anywhere. Now what I can do is crank this back and do my other side. And I can cheat again by pulling the rudder just a little bit. And what this is going to do is give very good tension over here and a little bit of play on this side that I'm trying to add into the system. So snug that. Find one of my loops. And this is kind of like doing shoelaces. You know, you work the top and then work your way up. Start from the bottom, work your way up. I'm going to drop this to just 1 over the top, because that'll be plenty to get the slide that I'm looking for. Yeah, now I can see that sliding. And now the nut's not quite centered, so I might need to throw some tension back on the other side. But that's kind of the critical distance, is like, how close is this? Is it going to get tight enough? Because that's always going to be the same. But now I can go over the top and just press, and it ain't going to move. So now I've gone 3 times. Now I'm going to go over the screw once, and then I'm going to start going back the other direction. Doesn't really matter how you do it, as long as it's done many times. That way it won't slip. Okay, and then a little hitch knot to keep that from moving. With those 6 times, as long as my hitch knots don't slide out, I can actually leave it. Yeah, we'll do 1 more. As long as the hitch knots don't slide out, it'll be fine all day. And even if I had this fail during the day, I could always just go ashore and retie. So there's a pull-through knot. Now the other side, isn't quite as tight as I was looking for, so I'm going to snug that up. And what I should have at the end is basically the same distance between this little nut to the rudder. If I have that, then I know I have good tension and good centering, because it will center the steering handle if the nuts are in the same position. So that's something I corrected from my previous tie-up, and I am happy about. The hitch knots are fairly easy to undo because they are not really tight. It's more a keep thread out of the way, kind of like when you have extra ratchet strap for your truck, and you just want it to be there but not a big pain. Alright, so I'm going to undo all but the last one so I can get some slide going here. Really just snug that up. Yep, that's what I wanted. Now press and pull, and it won't slip back. This thread is kind of waxy, which makes this easier. Okay, 3 over the top. Then I'm going to go over my screw and then start going the other way. Okay, and now some hitches over here. So what I've got is really tight and pretty well centered. There's a finger over here, there's a finger and a half over here, close enough. And what that gives me is a steering handle that is, oh yeah, it might be about 2 degrees too far forward, but no big deal. And now when I turn this handle, I get rudder movement. And I am looking at this, and if anything, come out of the tripod here. If anything, critically looking at this, it's going a little to the inside. Even in the proper position, you can see that it's too far in. But if you have that brake on this side, it's going to push that disc out even further and really mess it up. So indeed, having the brake toward the front of the boat, based on where these eyelets come out of the body, is crucial. You want it making the disc tilt this way, otherwise it's even worse. I can see it now. There's a big gap here, and there's no gap in the back, and it's still close. But this should be a lot less of a nuisance on the water because that cable won't be coming out of the track. So, the more you know. I hope your install goes smooth and that you don't have these problems that I did, because if you can avoid them, that's better. Alright, there's one other upgrade I'm doing to this pedals kit. It's expensive, cost about $1,000 plus, and I don't want to lose it. So it has this little eyelet up front. It's about the only place you can attach anything to, and I am going to attach this stainless steel bolt snap to the front there. So basically I need a leash so that if this is pulled out while you're on the water, you don't have to worry about losing your boat. Propulsion system, because this could easily fall off the deck and it's heavier than water. So there's an anchor point up here on this, and I'm going to go around both the handle and this anchor point. I'm a strap creator, that's what I do, so I have this set up for some sex bolts, and it's going to be awesome when I finish it. So I'm going to slip this through, and this will be permanently installed on the boat, and it'll be removable only if you take the screws apart. So it basically forms a loop here, and I'm not making it so long that it's in the way, but it needs to be long enough to pull this up out of the way. So let me put the bolts in. I decided not to make it a snap hook on both ends because this is less likely to fail if you think it's attached to the other side and it's not. Obviously this could be built that way if that suits your purpose better, but I figure permanent attachment to the boat is probably the smartest way. Alright, so that's the receiving end, or basically the nut side of the sex bolts. Slip the snap hook on there. These are stainless steel. They were selected for being just the right length to go through 3 pieces of this material. Now I'm putting in the screw side. And yes, if you want one of these for yours, I can make one for you. Just send me an email. I will tell you where the website is. I like fewer points of failure being possible. That's why I'm using 4 of these instead of just 2. These are pretty strong unless you're pulling them apart, which the force on this wouldn't be. It's going to be pulling it this way. So they're just binding them together. But again, it's good not to have an extra point of failure. If you wanted to get real crazy, you could put a zip tie around the whole thing also, as one final point of contact, but I don't think it's necessary. This will both look good and be functional. So now I have a strap loop, and I'm glad I didn't cross that over because I could have easily done that and not noticed. But I have a strap loop that's attached physically to the boat. It's easier to bring this up and try to reach it than to try to do it while it's in the well. But now, as you can see, this will just dangle loose. Shouldn't get in the way of the pedals too much. But now you can also pull the pedals kit fully out. And now, as you can see, it's attached to the boat, and it's not going to go overboard. Well, it can go overboard, but it's not going to get lost into the deep. Because good luck finding this in your murky lake. But anyway, strap keeper for your expensive pedals, so you don't have to worry about losing them. If you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give a thumbs up for a like, and consider subscribing. I do skiing in the winter, but kayaking in the summer. There will be more interesting things on the way, probably more boats too. You never know. Take it easy.